never stand out. You are making content that is not useful and doesn't distinguish you from any of your competitors. Rip the transcript from a creator, make slight tweaks to it to make it your own. That is the worst advice in the world. Ultimately, the way that I give any sort of feedback on any sort of content strategy or personal branding strategy is, does it ultimately move us closer or further from where we're wanting to go? And the thing that I've found so many people are doing right now is they haven't articulated what that goal is, or maybe they have, but then they end up falling victim to paying more attention to the vanity metrics. Does that make sense? It's like the person who says that they're building their personal brand to grow their business, and the number one thing they're always trying to figure out and solve for is views, not conversions. They're not tracking that. And so that would be the first thing that I would say is like, I prefer to do this when I have more context on like what we're trying to achieve. I think the structure that they're using for their titles is interesting. I would consider potentially, instead of having the person's name in the title, I would consider putting it in the thumbnail with them, or some sort of social proof. But that's really it on Genius Series. I'd say I would need more context on what they're trying to accomplish, and I would like to see more volume to see how things are going, and what problem they're really trying to solve. The next one was the living room, you said?
Yeah, the living room podcast.
Oh, very similar scenario here. We've got 6 posts, 6 videos here.
Yeah, these are all newer channels.
Okay.
For a new channel, they seem like they're doing really well, right?
Yeah.
In terms of views, again, we don't know.
Yeah, what they're optimizing for,
right.
But as far as like hitting with a splash out the gate.
What are they doing some things right, maybe, that maybe someone else in their same position isn't doing?
I love these guys, so I want to be careful. But what I'm seeing a contrast on between the Genius Series and the living room is that the living room is packaging their content more around the outcome that the viewer is going to get off the back of watching the video, versus some of these videos that I'm seeing here. Some are outcome based, but some of them don't feel as clear on what the outcome is. Something that might be useful for a lot of people listening or watching to this is like, I do tend to think of YouTube videos in a similar way that you want to think about offers. An offer has a very clear outcome articulated for the audience. And ideally it's like one outcome. It's not many different outcomes. It's a clear outcome that they're going to get. And I think a problem that a lot of people have on YouTube, especially if they're doing some sort of podcast or show, or if they're vlogging, things of this nature, what you end up seeing is a lot of people are trying to jam too many things into one video. And so it's not clear the outcome the viewer is going to get. And so when they're clicking in, they don't know what promise they are being guaranteed that they're going to get. And so I think that's like one thing that I would see here. I think the other thing that I would say is the living room, the thing that they're doing a good job of, at least on that video, is I feel very clear as soon as I click into the video that I'm in the right spot. Like I didn't in any way get promised something in the packaging that isn't confirmed within the opening 30 seconds. That's a really important thing to be doing on YouTube. I think a big one for the Genius Series is getting more clear on what the outcome is that the viewer is wanting. So Daniel Pink, I think, has some incredible insights for people. The scientific secrets of perfect timing, I don't really know what that means. And so I think the other thing that you want to be thinking through when it comes to packaging your content is this something that the audience has to think through? And this feels ridiculous to say, but if somebody has to take more than like 2 seconds to figure out what you're saying, you've lost them. And so I think trying to figure out like, what does that even mean? The scientific secrets of perfect timing, what am I getting off of that, right? And so what is the outcome? Like these communication skills will transform your life. That's really clear to me. And that is no surprise that is one of their top performers. What a billionaire taught me about success. Sure, I think one, we're leveraging Jesse Itzler, who is just a very charismatic character, but also you're leveraging the billionaire factor. That does really well on YouTube as of right now. And so that would be the biggest thing that I would say that I see as a contrast between the Genius Series and the Living Room podcast.
Okay, so let's dive into that just a little bit, which is,
please.
We want to fulfill on the promise that package gives you. And package, we mean for YouTube, the thumbnail, the title, that's giving us some promise. And within the first few seconds or 30 seconds, that intro, we want to let the viewer know you're going to get what you came here for. And if you don't let them know that quick, then they're likely to leave, which retention, and that equals views if that's what your goal was.
100%. Well, and the big thing is like, if you are orienting your content around solving problems for your ideal customer, you want retention. And the reason why is not because of the fucking amorphous reason that everyone gives, which is like more watch time equals more trust. That is sometimes true, but not always true. If you do a horrible job of solving problems in your content, me spending hours with you isn't going to make me trust you more. It's going to worsen my trust. And so what I believe and what we tend to operate within is that you want to solve the most amount of problems in the time that they spend with you. By doing that over and over, by setting an expectation of a problem that they are facing and helping them solve it, you create trust that you meet expectations when you set them. And so what we try to do is we try to get to a core learning as quick as possible in the intro that maps to what we promise them in the packaging. For example, yesterday we filmed, I want to say it was like maybe a 10-hour film day. We got about 6.5 hours of raw footage on a course that we're going to be putting out on YouTube on how to rebrand your personal brand. And in the opening, the intro, the hook, I define what a rebrand is. And so it immediately confirms if the title, and I don't know exactly what we're titling it, but it'll be something like maybe how to rebrand your personal brand. And if you click on that, you are expecting to learn that. And if in the opening 30 seconds, you get a definition of rebrand that makes it clear of what a rebrand is, boom, you now feel bought in and your likelihood of continuing to watch increases. We always talk about, everyone in the entertainment space on YouTube is talking about retention-based editing and including graphics and motion graphics and all of this stuff. And I believe the greatest retention hack for educational content is learning. And anything that impedes on that learning, including motion graphics, actually hurts the ability to learn and hurts retention, doesn't help.
So a lot of people are like focused on the motion graphics, VFX, and all these extra things. But if they're not doing, giving the value and giving the, fulfilling on a promise and making it very clear, then they're done.
Yes, 100%. The thing that you want to think about is including this graphic, for example, if we're talking about motion graphics, if I'm going to include this, is this aiding in the audience understanding the concept? Or am I doing this to try to distract them from being distracted? What most people who are overemphasizing motion graphics in their edits, in their YouTube videos, in their shorts are doing is they are trying to keep people engaged. They're trying to distract them away from the other distraction, which is the sidebar or the text that pops up or the Slack message that comes in. And I believe what you end up doing is you distract the audience from the actual learning and you actually make it harder for them to understand what you are saying. The analogy that I like to give is a really good, this is like for the editing aspect of a YouTube video, a great editor is like a tour guide at a museum. And if you've ever gone on a tour of a museum, you go through a lot of the exhibits, but you don't sit and talk through in detail every single one. A good tour guide knows we're gonna breeze past this one and then I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna emphasize this. I'm gonna tell you more backstory. That's what motion graphics serve. You only use them to draw emphasis on something that you're making easier to understand by including a visual.
So valuable. Okay, under 30 home buyer, last one.
Their first video, it looks like is one of their best. So that's always tough. I will just say that out of the gate. When you have a video pop in the beginning, for a lot of people, that can be actually more of a curse than a blessing.
Why is that?
It sets, well, one, it can set unrealistic expectations. And two, what I have found a lot of people end up doing is they overemphasize trying to replicate what worked. And a lot of times, due to lack of experience and knowledge, they don't know what they should be replicating and they end up trying to replicate the wrong things. And they end up like chasing, it's almost like they're like trying to chase this high that they can never get again. And so I actually prefer, when possible, for new creators to have a little bit of a actually like slower start, to be able to figure out what they're wanting to talk about. Because the other thing, and this doesn't happen as much on YouTube, but I see this wildly prevalent with short form, is a lot of times people will have a video pop that has nothing necessarily to do with their subject matter expertise or the offer they have on the back end of their content. And they double, triple down on that, and they end up building this brand around something that they don't want to be known for and do not want to talk about, but they feel like they're a prisoner to it. So that would be kind of the first thing, but here, let's see. Well, they do a good job of making sure that what you click in, assuming like that one that we just listened to there, is buying a house before 30 even possible. And then immediately it starts with, think you're too young to buy a home. I like that. The thing that I would say is, for that intro, I think there was too much dead space. And so I think what you're wanting to do is you need to capture the attention very quickly. And so that question was great. I like it. That's fine. But I think we need to get into a little bit more meat a little bit quicker if possible. We really try to nail what we use, which is our 4Cs framework for our intros, in the first 30 seconds when possible. And what that looks like is, in no particular order: call out, credibility, compass, core learning. A call out is calling out, who is this for? So they're doing a good job of that. The two videos that I've just played, their packaging is calling somebody out, and immediately their opening line is the same thing. Then the next one is credibility. Why should I listen to you on this subject matter? That's the number one question in the educational space that anybody consuming your content is going to wonder, especially if they're finding you for the first time. Why should I trust this person? Because there's a million people giving advice on whatever you're giving advice on. And so why do I listen to you over the other people? Also, a lot of people have been burned. I watched this creator, did what they said, and it tanked my business, or it made my relationship worse, blah, 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 blah. I ended up gaining weight, not losing weight, whatever. Or I fucked up my hormones, whatever. Number 3 is going to be your compass. Give them the direction that we are going to go throughout the video. Set more promises, okay? Make sure you fulfill those promises throughout the video. And the final one, which we were just talking about, is your core learning. Let's get into a learning for the audience as quick as possible. And so something that might be interesting actually for this video is, rather than opening it with a question like that, because we're kind of already asking that question in the packaging, maybe what we do is we actually give a statistic of why it's possible for somebody under 30 to be able to buy a home. Or maybe we reveal the fact that everyone thinks that it's too expensive in these areas, but here's some areas in America that are affordable for somebody under 30 buying their first home, kind of a thing. That breaks the belief that the viewer has going into it and causes them to react with curiosity to cause them to watch more. So that would be like the first things that I would say here. Big note is, I think there's too much words on some of these thumbnails. I think there's too much copy. This is where my content director, Trevor Odom, is actually the expert more than me on this.
Trevor, what do you think, Trevor? How many words on a thumbnail?
I don't want to put him on the spot, but he says typically 3 to 5, right?
Yeah, no more than 5 usually.
Yeah.
Unless they're small words. I've seen up to 7 words.
Yeah.
But very tiny.
But I would say those are anomalies. Those are exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, you want to keep your words on the thumbnail from 3 to 5. And then I believe the other thing that he talks about is wanting to make sure that you don't have more than 3 poll points, is what he uses. And basically you can think of that like, let's use an example of, maybe you have a photo of you centered, and then you have copy on screen, and then maybe you have a logo of a brand that you're talking about. That would be 3 poll points. You wouldn't want to introduce a 4th. And the reason why is, again, back to what we were saying earlier, you want people to be able to quickly understand what's going on here. In a world where people are scrolling through their feeds like lightning fast, I mean, you do it, I do it, we're scrolling past shit and making a split-second decision if we're going to watch it. It needs to be easily consumable. And the other thing that I would recommend that this person does is, some of their text is really small. And so what they should be doing is, every thumbnail they produce, you should text it to somebody, and don't click into it. Look at the preview of it in your iMessage. It's going to be tiny. And if you can't read it, nobody will be able to read it, because that's how it's showing up on YouTube on mobile. That's the size that this is on the sidebar, even on desktop. And so you want to make sure that it's actually consumable and easy to understand what's going on. And so I'd say for the under 30 home buyer, the things that I would say is we need stronger intros that follow a tight 4Cs framework that are giving a core learning and almost like flipping the audience with a contrarian take. That would be the move that I would go for. That core learning should be a contrarian take, right? The contrarian take here is that, and this is unfortunate, it's a contrarian take, but you can buy a home under 30, right? And that is like actually a very contrarian take in the market right now. And so we need something that confirms that in the opening. So that would be the feedback for them. They need to reduce the amount of pull points and text on screen. For the Living Room podcast, I think they're doing a really good job. Honestly, they have so little volume. I don't have that much feedback for them. I would continue doing what they're doing. And I would see if there's a way to increase the frequency if possible. But honestly, I think the weekly show is great. They're doing a really good job. Their views are, other than 2 videos, very consistent. And that says a lot to me. The Genius series, I think that they need to make sure that they are packaging their content with clear outcomes that the audience cares about and understands. If we're too close to the material and we're too much of an expert, we understand these things, we have the context, but we can't think through our lens. We have to think through the lens of the audience and what they want.
Guys, we've been so passionate about finding the biggest geniuses, and this is just one of the many episodes. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next one, make sure to subscribe. All right, let's get back to the episode. So if you had to rank these by growth potential for the channel, which one goes first?
Living Room.
Living Room. And why?
Because they're following a lot of best practices and they already, within 6 videos, have clear product market fit. The other thing I will throw out, and I don't know if this is the Genius series is doing, you can take it, a good job, but they have similar subscriber counts. And even though I do not believe that followers and subscribers are a thing to optimize for, I do believe they are an indicator of your audience wanting more. And so that's something that if I were on the back end of their YouTube channel, I'd probably want to dive into just a little bit more.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm not sure if you've been asked this before. If you were trying to ruin someone's brand at this early stage, what's the worst advice you could give here?
Talking about a bunch of different things that you don't have personal experience on, regurgitating generic advice that everybody in your space is giving. The number one piece of advice that every content strategist, I'm saying every, not every, but for hyperbole's sake, many people online are telling you to rip the transcript from a creator in your space and then make slight tweaks to it to make it your own, and then make that video. That is the worst fucking advice in the world. Why? Because you are contributing to the problem. You are making content that is not useful, is not serving your audience, and doesn't distinguish you from any of your competitors. You will never stand out. The only thing that we want to hear is your advice through the lens of you, what you have done. You should only be giving advice on things that you have actually done. Successes and failures. Okay, so that would be the biggest thing actually that I would say is like just copying what everybody else is doing in your space is the easiest way to destroy your personal brand or never even build a strong one to begin with. Another one I would say is trying to spread yourself too thin, being on all platforms at once. For most people who are starting off in the beginning, they are a solo creator. And for solo creators, I encourage them strongly, pick one primary platform and one secondary platform, and that's it. That's all you're going to do in the beginning. There are a lot of individuals who have a lot of credibility in this space who talk about posting 100, 200, 300 times a day if possible. And they are correct. That is 100% the right move. Just like Chris Bumstead's workout routine, C-Bum, the Mr. Olympia, I think like 7-time Mr. Olympia, his workout routine is correct, but it is not correct for me on day one. I will fucking lose all my limbs and be injured to the point where I can never get into the gym. And so I think for a lot of people, they need to recognize that you can work your way up to being on all these platforms. But in the beginning, you need to be able to apply ruthless focus and innovation to one platform and then have a secondary one that you are repurposing to so that you don't have one channel risk. If you do have a team and you are starting off and you have at least one person like I did with Trevor, then you pick 3 primary platforms and 1 to 3 secondaries. And then what you do is you still apply the ruthless focus to one at a time. You have 3 that you rotate between. And so what this looked like for us is YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. We just applied ruthless focus for the first year with YouTube. So the biggest mistake people could make is trying to apply that focus across 5 or 6 different platforms. It's a horrible move. The other thing, back to where we started, and the thing that I said was tough in giving the feedback is you should articulate why you're doing this. What makes building your personal brand a W? What does winning look like? Because the number one thing that I have noticed that a lot of people come to me with is, I don't even know if my personal brand's working. You know how this is. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of investment. You're removing privacy. You're sharing so much. Why go through all that effort if you don't even know how it's worth it? And so if you go through this journey and you just never figure out why you're doing it, that is a great way to build a horrible personal brand. One other thing that I'll throw out there, not being intentional with who and what you pair yourself with. A lot of people don't recognize that what you share is what you pair yourself with. So if you show up online with characters who have less than ideal reputations in your space, you are going to have that less than ideal reputation. This is where the term lumped into the crowd comes in, right? If you show up with characters who are known for being scammy and sketchy and taking advantage of people online, even if you don't actually do that yourself, the internet does not deal in nuance. They see you showing up with those people, and so they assume you are the same. And so not being intentional with the subject matters that you do touch or don't touch, or the people that you show up or don't show up with, is another incredible way to build a terrible personal brand. That was a fun frame. I like that.
And it seems like a lot of this kind of comes down to your kind of 4-step or 4-part brand framework, brand journey framework, as you call it, right? Can you maybe break that down? Because some of the mistakes that people can make are due to them not following this framework. So it's so important when you're just starting at the core.
Yes. And a quick little caveat too, the cool thing about this framework is every 6, 12, 18, 24 months, you can do it again, because this will change. That's the thing. Whenever we work with a partner one-on-one, and I feel like, yeah, they got legs, like they're gonna go, I always tell them, we're gonna do this now, but this outcome that you desire, it will change. It will shift, because opportunities that you can't even imagine will come through. So the brand journey framework is 4 questions. And what we're doing with these questions is we're working our way from the goal that we have all the way to today. And so the first question we ask is, what do we want to have happen? What is the outcome that we desire? AKA, what makes this insane effort of building your personal brand? It's ludicrous to do this. To be posting content on Instagram and YouTube, that's insane. So what makes it worth it? Why are you doing this? Okay, so what outcome do you desire? The second question is, in order to achieve that outcome, what would I have to be known for? A lot of amazing opportunities come into our life because of the reputation that we have. That's what I would argue the majority of opportunities are. It's not even necessarily just the hard skills that you have, it's the reputation that you have around those skills. So what would you have to be known for in order for that outcome to be achieved? The third question is, to be known for that thing, what do you gotta do? We don't get known for shit just by talking, despite what a lot of people online are trying to do. We gotta do shit that we can then talk about to be known for the thing. And so that takes us to the 4th and final question, which brings us to this very moment. In order to do the thing, to get known for the thing, to achieve the outcome I desire, what do I need to learn? And this, the first 3 are gonna be, 1 to 3 sentence answers. The what I need to learn might be like several paragraphs, depending on where you're at. But this gives you the roadmap to go from where you are right now to how you're going to get there. And then you get to use this as a measurement tool. You don't ever now say, I don't know if my personal brand is working. You know it's working if you're moving closer to that goal. You know it's not working if what you're doing is moving you further away from that goal. And so the brand journey framework is an incredible framework to utilize. I've heard from a lot of people that it's actually very effective in many other areas in life too, to just reverse engineer any outcome that you want. I'm not an expert in life. I'm an expert in personal branding. And so that's where I touch it. But it is a framework that I use for many different things.
Yeah, so it seems like step 1 is you need to learn something. You need to have a skill set, something of value. And then eventually you're gonna do something with that skill set that draws some outcome, some result. And then you need to talk or give some value around what you know and what you've done. But before all of that, you need to figure out what the end goal is. Is the end goal views? Is the end goal revenue? Is the end goal something else?
Yeah.
And then you work your way backwards. But it seems like that's the core of what you teach initially when people are just getting started. So for people on this level, for the audience, if you're on this level, you don't have any following, or you have 0 to 1,000 followers, if you're not following this framework, you might be headed in a direction and you were trying to go here and now you start going here.
Yeah, I would argue you're like Alice in Wonderland when she comes up to the fork in the road and Cheshire Cat is sitting in the tree and she says, which direction should I go? And the cat's like, well, where do you want to end up? And she goes, I don't know. And he goes, either way will take you there. I want to be intentional with how I'm building my personal brand. It's a heavy investment in every area, monetarily, time, privacy, like I said, like everything. And so I want to be intentional with how I'm crafting it.
Okay, you've worked with some of the biggest personal brands in the space, and I'm gonna brag for you right now, okay? So you were Gary V's videographer and his TikTok lead. And in 3 months, you grew his TikTok from 300K to 3.5 million followers. And then after that, you built an 18-person media team from the ground up for Alex Hormozi. And you scaled Alex and his wife Leila's audience from 1.2 million to over 11.5 million followers and generated over 3 billion impressions in just 2024 alone. 3 billion. So, okay, let's take us back, right? What did that kind of 5-year plan or that 3-year plan look like from day one, working with each of those creators?
I don't really deal in 5-year plans. I like shorter time periods for planning ahead. One, because I'll give a little bonus nugget here. A big thing around batching content that a lot of people make the mistake of is they batch too much content all at once and then they start publishing it. But what they lack is the learnings that they get from publishing the content and iterating in the future. And so I like to be more, I like being proactive, but this might sound weird and I don't want this to be misunderstood, but I like taking a reactive approach. I like seeing signals and then going hard at it. And so with Gary, the TikTok thing, I want to be very clear. We utilize some very good strategies, but the reason why these brands grow is because of the source material, right? Us strategists that are accompanying and surrounding these brands, we're gasoline on an already bizzling fire, okay? And so with Gary, what it was is figuring out, okay, Gary doesn't create content. More than anybody I have ever worked with, that man doesn't actually allocate much time for making content. The way that I would get TikTok native clips was like the 60 seconds that he had in between his 5-minute meetings or on the walk to the bathroom for him to take a piss. Like, it was extreme. And so there was very little planning that I could do. It had to be very reactive. The planning was, I have these 5 videos this week that I'm trying to get from him. And now I'm literally staring at him in his office and seeing that he just hit send on a text. And right when his thumb comes off, I'm gonna enter the room and ask him if I can film a video. Like that kind of detail. And so that was one system. The other thing too that I'll add to that is the crazy thing that might be shocking for some people is Gary, when he said, I want to go hard at music, or after Musical.ly was bought by ByteDance, he was like, I want to go hard on TikTok. And that's another thing that I want people to know is he always initiated all of that. It wasn't us as the team initiating it. It was like, I see this thing, Gary, and I want the team to act on it. And so he came out and he was like, I want to go hard on TikTok. Who's going to run it? Caleb, you run it. First 7 days, I don't want you making anything. I just want you consuming all day, which was shocking to hear from him. I didn't expect that. But what he told me is he basically was like, I want you to understand the psychology and how people are making content on TikTok, because for anyone who's listening, I would bet the majority of people were not on TikTok in like 2019. Probably not. The majority of people here maybe have gotten on it in the last 5 or 6 years, tops. In 2019, TikTok was an anomaly. This was a platform that the majority of content creators that had built followings on Instagram, YouTube, wherever, didn't understand. because it was just a totally different style of consumption. The lingo was different, the formats were different. And so in those 7 days, I studied what people were doing, and I started noticing at the time that some of the best performing content at the time on TikTok was wholesome content. It was called wholesome talk. I don't know if anybody remembers that shit, but what I started doing is going into Gary's content, all of the Daily V episodes, looking for the most wholesome moments. Gary is an incredibly generous person, and there was many times where he'd be speaking at a live event. During a Q&A, someone would say something crazy like, "Can I get a job?" He'd be like, "Yeah, you're hired. Fly out to New York in the next 2 weeks and we'll onboard you." And so we would find those moments and then pair them with maybe him selfie video showing that employee at VaynerMedia, right? And those would get millions of views. Or the moment in Trash Talk where he's going and doing garage sale negotiations, like high level, high stakes shit. But those moments did really well, but the moments that did the best were when he was in between garage sales and he'd stop at a lemonade stand and he would buy lemonade and support a young entrepreneur and ask them their unit economics from a 7-year-old, right? And so those were moments that we were identifying were working well on the platform given what people wanted to consume. And so we layered on top Gary with that. Rather than trying to force what we were creating on other platforms, we understood what the demand was on TikTok at the time. And then we filtered Gary's content through that demand. For Alex and Leila, I mean, I think the biggest thing was we were trying to tackle building the team. When I joined, they were working with like contractors, agencies and stuff. And our first goal was bringing everything in-house. And so I'd say the first 6 to 12 months was me trying to understand what these incredible agencies that we were working with were doing, what was working, and then what could we absorb in-house? What could I do on my own versus needing to hire out? And so the first couple of hires looked like bringing on a videographer, editors, short form editors, long form editors, and it was more tackling the media team infrastructure than necessarily even the content strategy in the beginning. The other thing too that I will say is a big thing that I learned during that season is not, and this is it might sound obvious to some people, but I have to say it because it's actually not being done by the majority. The thing that you want to do is instead of planning some massive content calendar out for the next 6 months, I like to plan maybe 4 weeks ahead. I like to put the content out and I like to iterate based on what we are getting data off of. And I like to look at the top 10% of our performing content, the best 10% of our content. And I like to figure out how do we replicate what has led this to perform well? Meaning, is it the subject matter? Like, is this topic within the big umbrella of business? Is this specific topic something that is resonating with the audience? Or is it the format? Is it the delivery, right? Because bringing somebody into a direct to camera where you're sitting in front of the camera talking to it versus going on a walk versus working out in the gym, sharing information in those 3 different settings, you're gonna deliver it in a different way. You're gonna articulate it in a different way. And so I think in the beginning, it was more of just trying to figure out why are things working and how do we replicate these conditions in order to create better performing content in the future. The other thing that I will say is it was trying to figure out, okay, how do we create a system that we can scale our content output while reducing the amount of input from the founders, from the people that are in the content? Any business owner listening right now is going to resonate with that hardcore. In the beginning, maybe you are excited about building your personal brand and you allocate more time, but very quickly reality kicks in and there's fires in the business. There's problems that need solving. And so what I tried to do is build a content engine that required as little of their time as possible in the seasons when they were busy. And then when they would have more time to make content, cool, we would lean into that. But it was always trying to reverse engineer wherever they were at. And that's why you can't plan super far ahead. With some business owners you can, but with what I have experienced, high level operators who are actually operating the business, not just like front facing, but they're really actually running shit in the background. Your goal, your job is not to develop a 6-12 month plan. It's to every day reverse engineer where they are, because today you have a plan and it will completely shift tomorrow.